It's dark, and we're wearing sunglasses. Hit it.
I will be your champion.
This better not awaken anything in me.
The name's Bond. James Bond.
That is the meaning of inner strength.
Some days you just can't get rid of a bomb.
I'm responsible for my own happiness. I can't even be responsible for my own breakfast.
We have Santa Claus.
One does not simply walk into Mordor.
Assemble.
Ooh, welcome to Two for the Show, the movie review show from Nerd It Here First. I'm Ryley Trahan, and as always, I'm joined by Deepak Chitnis.
You don't want any of this, bub.
And in the producer booth, making sure that we stay vaguely on task this week as we crisscross the multiverse in search for our better selves. It's none other than Bruno Menezes. How you doing, buddy?
I'm still waiting on replies from Scoutmaster Kevin.
So this week we are going to be talking Deadpool, and we're going to be talking a little bit of Comic Con news. We've got an interview in store for you later with the great Heidi MacDonald of The Beat, one of the all-time comic news websites. If you haven't checked out The Beat, you'll want to after you hear Heidi and I chat. It was a great conversation. She and I talked all about comics being adapted into movies, what have been the sticking points for the people making decisions over time. She gave me some really good dirt on inside DC and with some of the difficulties that have happened over there with trying to produce movies. We talked about artists and how much credit they deserve for drawing things that basically get turned into full-on movie panels later. It's a really fun interview you're going to want to stick around with. But usually I just want to point out, we're going to do a little bit, we're switching it up a bit for Deadpool and Wolverine, crossing over
Seems
into
appropriate, anarchic kind of.
Yeah, we're a little R-rated this week. We're getting a little off the chain.
Just this week.
Just this week. Yeah, we're gonna say fuck a lot. But so instead of saving the movie review for the end of the show, which is what we typically do, this week we're gonna just kick it off because we've got a lot of thoughts about Deadpool and Wolverine that are sort of going to build into what'll be our later conversation about all the news out of Comic-Con over the weekend, all the stuff we heard, all the updates for the MCU. It just made more sense instead of starting with that stuff and then being like, hey, let's talk about the movie. We'll start with the movie.
Well, and to that end, our dear listeners deserve to know that it's impossible to talk about this movie without talking about this movie and everything and everyone that's in it.
Yes.
And then, of course, that will dovetail quite nicely with our MCU conversation later. So those who have not seen Deadpool and Wolverine yet and are looking for a virgin movie-going experience with no spoilers, I sympathize, and I would advise you to come back after you watch the movie.
Yeah, skip ahead, scroll down to the timestamps. You can find where my conversation with Heidi starts in the show notes. Mm-hmm. Skip ahead to that, and then listen to us talk MCU, Comic-Con news. And then once you've seen Deadpool and Wolverine, circle back around for the first half of the episode.
Yeah,
this has been
that a Deadpool spoiler won't leak into the MCU talk, but yeah.
True enough. Yep. But so
it'll be fine.
With that being said, let's start with what I think is probably the biggest talking point about Deadpool and Wolverine, the third movie in the Deadpool franchise, which is the fucking box office.
Yeah.
This thing is a juggernaut. Deepak, well, so I'm going to talk a little bit about it. And Deepak, if you could pull up the specific numbers just so that you could speak to them once I kind of end the prologue here. But I mean, we already knew, of course, that Deadpool was the highest grossing R-rated film franchise in history, right? Just with the first two movies. The first movie set all kinds of box office records in terms of an R-rated comedy when it came out. Was it on Valentine's Day? Was that?
Yes, it was actually. Yeah. It was.
But this thing, I really just feel like, and partially it's because of the environment that we're in, right? The last few years have had so few big box office successes. And we've been really, especially me, on this podcast, I'm the guy who stumps for the theatrical experience. I'm the guy who's reminding you to go see a movie in the theaters if you can. Next episode, when you hear me talk to Walt Hickey, I've already got that interview in the can. He and I actually spent a good amount of time talking about the science of being in a theater and how it changes your viewing experience. But even for me, the last, I've been desperate for any excuse I can point to be like, no, look, people like going to theaters. And I feel like this thing's just, it's like the pandemic never happened. Like this is real pre-COVID box office numbers in a way that we have not seen. I honestly feel like since the shutdown. But Deepak, you're looking at the numbers. Can you talk me through it a little bit?
We have seen these numbers since the pandemic. This is the biggest opening weekend since Avatar 2.
Oh, of course.
But it is now the 8th highest grossing opening weekend of all time. It is the highest grossing R-rated opening weekend of all time, which means that it surpasses the record set by Deadpool 1. I had thought Joker had set a new record, but apparently Joker set a record for the total box office gross of an R-rated movie, not the opening weekend. If we remember Joker, there was some issues opening weekend. People thought there might be some violence. So I think that's right.
Yeah, it is so insane to think back on that and the level of like the think pieces that were getting put out after.
That we saw Deadpool in today.
There were cops outside.
Yeah, no, but it didn't have Joker that time.
Oh, you're right. When we saw Deadpool, they didn't screen it. But where I did go to see it, there was an active police presence. But I even remember, like that level, I can sort of get on board with. Again, I think it was an overreaction, but based on the atmosphere at the time, I understand security being like, this is my job. The thing that trips me out is like remembering how the Hollywood Reporter or whoever had like seen it at TIFF and was like, this movie is going to break society. And then you go see it.
It felt like they wanted it. It felt like they were out to.
It was think PC. Yes. Yes.
Yeah. And I mean, look, again, I don't think there's any such thing as bad publicity unless you're Jonathan Majors. So it all helped.
Well, and this is the thing this is on the opposite end of the spectrum, right? In terms of what we're talking about. You and I went to go see it together, and there were many children in the theater where we went to go see the film.
Were there really?
There were. I was counting, buddy. And afterwards, we walked out.
Thing to admit to.
You, me, Jack, and your buddy, right, all went together to go see it. And Jack and I were walking back to the car, and we were behind. It was a dad and his kid, and then they were talking to two adult men, just kind of chatting about them.
Same dad and kid after Wakanda Forever.
Oh, very possible, very possible. But dad was saying to the other two guys, yeah, he didn't quite get all the jokes.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah, it is this interesting sort of thing, right? And that's I wanted to speak to that in terms of the box office, right? Because on the one hand, it is an R-rated movie that that is the third in a series, so you know what you're going to get, right? It's going to get
the third in a series. It's the 34th in the Marvel Cinematic.
But this is the other. No,
But it also comes after all the X-Men stuff, and even more than that, maybe all the Fox stuff.
I should also point out that it's been very specifically named. It's been very specifically told that it's not Deadpool 3.
All of this is true.
Still
that's all PR bullshit. It's
no, but the not naming it Deadpool 3 is absolutely a deliberate choice because they are sort of trying to say you don't have to see the first two. But I think that.
No, but it's also we know why they put his name in the title.
Yes.
We'll get to that.
Yes. On the one hand, it is the third movie in an R-rated trilogy of films that are gratuitously violent and have over-the-top explicit language, right? It's not just that it says fuck a lot, right? It's that there
is no similar superhero franchise.
Right.
There's nothing you can point to.
It has diverse and descriptive and sort of poetic language that it uses to refer to the art of analingus, right? Like this is a movie that is incredibly violent, is incredibly crass, and genuinely in no way should be appropriate for children. But as you say, Deepak, at the same time, it is the 34th Marvel movie, and it's the whatever number Hugh Jackman Wolverine movie, right? So in a lot of ways, I think that those things are benefiting it because I don't know that a movie I don't know that Deadpool 3, even if it was the exact same movie put out by Fox, would have had this level of box office success because I do think that the MCU of it all buoys it to a certain extent. I think that there are kids whose parents take them to every Marvel movie, and this is the only Marvel movie this year. And there are probably some parents who are like, yeah, I'll just tell them not to cuss and it'll be fine. And honestly, look, I'm not saying that's bad parenting or anything. Like, I don't have kids. I think the idea of raising kids sounds very challenging. I am no one to tell anyone how they should or should not raise their kids. It's just surprising to me that this movie has been so financially successful. And I think that a part of it has to be sort of a veneer of acceptability that is presented by it being a Marvel picture rather than a Fox picture.
So it's funny that you say the MCU is what buoys it, considering the movie admits itself that it's coming in at a bit of a low point. And I hear what you're saying about kids just drag their parents or get their parents to take them to any MCU movie. It's funny that Reynolds, after the success that it had this weekend, attributed it to what he calls this being the first 4-quadrant R-rated movie, in that there is something for everyone. It's got your comic book stuff, it's got your action, it's got your romance, it's got your adventure, and it all kind of goes into this one big gumbo. But at the end of the day, I think there was a lot of pent up frustration at the MCU about them trying to, whether it's introducing new characters that they're not introducing well, or it's giving these movies to directors or putting them through a pipeline where they don't get the opportunity to have enough time in post-production, or they're too busy reshooting because they want things to line up with the next thing. And I think this movie, and a lot of what we'll talk about later, is Feige throwing up his hands and realizing the multiverse has not worked out. And Ryley has talked about this numerous times as far as what the schedule did to that, what COVID did to that, how the plans got shuffled. And this movie feels very consciously like if the multiverse is going to work, the approach that it has to take is one that we are not as bound to the fidelity of canon the way we were with the Infinity Saga. It's time for us to cut back, let loose, and let people at the end of the day have a good time. Because yeah, we can still be building the pieces and we can still focus on telling individual stories that stack up. But at the end of the day, the concept itself is so inherently ridiculous that the characters with the most successful financial movies in the multiverse have been, for no surprise, Deadpool and Wolverine and Spider-Man, because they're the two least reverent characters that we have right now. Even though the Spider-Man movie did try to make it kind of wholesome and genuine and heartfelt, and we can talk about how successful that movie was on a creative level. The fact of the matter is that it is the highest grossing Marvel movie since Endgame, and this one will probably overtake it.
Can I put it another way that I think sort of gets to the heart of the issue even more cleanly? I think that this movie is the first MCU movie that we have seen in a dog's age. And honestly, the last one might have been Iron Man 2 or 3. But the first MCU movie we have seen in a long time that has not been so fucking preoccupied with how important it is. And I think that is a breath of fresh air for moviegoers who feel exhausted by having to track dozens of movies, multiple television shows, having one-shot short films, right? Like the way that this thing has...
I don't know how many fans were ever really keeping up with everything in the Infinity Saga. I think we've gotten movies since then, like until Ant-Man 3, both the Ant-Mans were never that consequential. That was kind of the big beef against them, right?
But is that not the complaint against the MCU? Is there so much homework? Oh, we got a kitten.
There is the complaint about how much there is to do now. And they tried to do that with the Marvels last year, where they said we're going to start branding some of these as like the less essential ones that you can just kind of enjoy, but they're not core MCU or sacred timeline, whatever the thing they wanted to call it. But I do think there is a bit of, we need to get away from having people rely on this much magnitude of knowledge to go into this. We go back to something you and I talked about, Ryley, a long time ago when it came to why Logan worked so well and why the X-Men movies, despite the lack of kind of nuts and bolts continuity, still hold up pretty well, because they have a concept of emotional continuity that they keep with them. That we don't, like, the Wolverine stuff never added up. We don't know exactly where Logan is compared to, like, the Wolverine, Days of Future Past. He's got the katana in Logan, but we don't know where. It doesn't matter. It's Hugh Jackman as Logan. And he's interacting with a lot of the same characters and the same actors we've seen him interact with before. And Patrick Stewart being there, of course, even though he dies in X3, and unless you've seen the after credit scene, you don't know that he's back alive. He just shows up in Days of Future Past, right? But it's the emotional continuity. And I think if that's what Marvel is going to start to focus on and key in on, and again, this will come back when we talk about Downey, we're going to see a lot. We're going to see a much more, I don't know if they will work for me or you, but I think they will work for general audiences.
All right, let's get into spoilers proper. So Deadpool and Wolverine is a film that has two plots. And I'm going to sort of try and take us through them as cohesively as I can, because Deepak on the last episode did a great job of taking us through the plot of Christ. I can't even remember what the last... Long Legs. So it's my turn to do the plot. in Deadpool and Wolverine, here's the story. Wade Wilson, aka the Merc with the Mouth Deadpool, is living in a
mild-mannered boy.
Is living in a universe that is doomed to come to an end. The reason for that is that its anchor being, aka the star of the universe, it no longer exists. And what you need to recognize, and I think this is honestly my favorite part about the movie, is that narratively, they are breaking the fourth wall, right? They have taken the sort of Deadpool knows he's in a movie thing and expanded it out to like Deadpool knows he exists in the age of the MCU. So when they say that your anchor being has died, what they mean is no one wants to make any more movies about your universe. So your universe now has to end. So Deadpool thinks he is his own anchor being. So he's like, well, no problem. I'll just go back to fighting crime because he's been taking some time off from fighting crime. But it turns out that, in fact, his anchor being was Wolverine from the film Logan. And when Logan died, his universe began to decay. So in an attempt to save his universe and the people that he loves, Deadpool travels through different universes to try and find a replacement Wolverine. And he finds one and he brings him into the universe and he says, look, we did a great job. And that's sort of when the second plot of the film starts up. And the second sort of main plot of the film is that like the Fox universe has to be over. And there's like a plot mechanic that they come up with, and there's this place called the Void that things get sent to.
Let me ask you about the Void real quick.
Well, hold on. I gotta get all the plot shit out real quick.
You're gonna get through the whole thing? Okay, cool.
Yeah. So Deadpool and Wolverine get sent to the Void because their ending their universe cannot be avoided, and so in the Void they meet all sorts of Fox characters from days gone by, from days of future past, if you will. They meet Sabretooth. They meet Johnny Storm, played by Chris Evans, which was very good and funny. They meet Jennifer Garner's Elektra. They meet Wesley Snipes' Blade. They meet Channing Tatum as the Gambit that never was.
Who I would just like to point out did have a line where he was like, I think I was born here in terms of
I don't know if my universe ever existed. Oh my God, it was so funny. We're going to talk about it, Bruno. I think he was the star of the film. And then, of course, they meet X-23, played by, what's her name, Deepak? That wonderful actress who played her in the first film. Daphne Keane. Who I think, for my money, is the core of any potential X-Men film Kevin Feige wants to make. But anyway, that team coupled up with Ryan Reynolds' Deadpool and Hugh Jackman's Wolverine, they fight against Emma Corrin as Cassandra Nova, pretty standard issue Marvel villain performance. And eventually they get back to their real universe where in Wolverine and Deadpool stop the evil TSA man from TSA is how do you get on an airplane? Anyway, they save the universe. They fight a bunch of Deadpools. They say a bunch of jokes. Anytime it needs to be serious, they cut to a close-up of Hugh Jackman, and he has emotions, which is good. And yeah, at the end of the day, they all save their universe and are happy. Which it's a very light movie on plot, honestly. Like it's mostly cameos, but it sort of brings me to my first talking point, Deepak, which is this: they do not go to the MCU. They stay in Deadpool's universe. The whole point of the fucking movie is that they stay in Deadpool's universe. I am curious if any of this ever comes up again. Like,
I have a weird theory about that.
Get in here, buddy.
Yeah, go ahead.
Let's hear it.
In the very end of Deadpool and Wolverine, when they're doing that explosion thing with the Time Ripper and
when they have to hold hands to save the world.
There's a couple of beats during Deadpool's flashbacks where it shows like a flashback of him with like his family in their like home universe, and then like very Back to the Future style, they blink out of there, and it's just the set for like just a few split seconds, and then it goes back. So I wondered, like, I mean, it immediately gets undercut by B-15 later saying that they're restoring their timeline and their universe and all that, but it did make me think, at least for a split second, if something happened there, like if maybe
they timeline jumped or something.
If the whole group jumped somehow, like Miles Morales at the end of the Secret Wars comic book run and his family.
I think that that's entirely possible. What my suspicion is, Bruno, and then I want to hear Deepak's thoughts about it, is that when they made the picture, they maybe weren't sure what direction that was going in. And now that it's made all the money under the sun, oh yeah, for sure. That's exactly what happened.
Yeah. We're back 10 years ago when they were leaving themselves options because they were still not sure that a movie with a raccoon and a tree would be accepted by people.
Guardians was the exact comp I thought of. Yes.
Yeah. And it actually did not occur to me while watching the movie that they never made it back to, or never made it to the MCU. My bigger, I guess what a lot of people are going to be talking about now is that there's a repeated joke that Jackman is going to be doing this till he's 90.
Till you're 90.
But there is a very specific dialogue exchange where Deadpool asks him, "Am I going to see you again?" And Jackman says, "Probably not."
Yeah.
So I don't know. I mean, the cynic in me thinks if they back up enough of a truckload of cash, he will say yes.
What it really felt like to me, kind of on that point, Reynolds and Jackman are so well known as a public friendship, right? And ever since Wolverine Origins, which pin in that I want to circle back to later, like the idea of a Deadpool franchise was born out of how poorly they handled Deadpool in Wolverine Origins, right? And in many ways, I think the idea that there would ever be a Deadpool movie and that Ryan Reynolds would play the character, of course, has not died since then. It felt to me, especially there's a moment when, because for our listeners who might not have seen the film and maybe just don't have an interest in seeing the movie, and so you're listening to a podcast about it because you have no interest in going to see it. There's a moment when, so Hugh Jackman is not playing the same Wolverine he has always played. And so to your point, Deepak, it's an emotional conflict, right?
That's the thing. It's the credits make it very clear when you mentioned earlier that the anchor being died. They make it explicitly clear that this is not going to, I mean, they defile Logan in its own way.
Right. Yeah, they dig up his grave and pull out his bones.
They don't cancel Logan. They don't wipe it out of existence.
No.
They very much acknowledge that version is done, and the version you're seeing here is like a potential new action figure that we'll have for it.
But so this Wolverine, he is supposed to be, and they refer to him many times as the worst Wolverine. And really, in a lot of ways, it feels almost like this movie is a series of contrivances to get to a point where on screen Ryan Reynolds can look at Hugh Jackman in his final performance and say, whatever comes after this, you were the best Wolverine. Which is what which is a line
verbatim,
in the film.
Verbatim,
And
then they almost do Kirk and Spock, and
they do Kirk and Spock. Literally, he does. He puts it up on the screen there, and I think that is all very touching. But at the same time, it does feel like, I think the theme of the film, right, and going back to those cameos that I loved so much, right, the Wesley Snipes of it all, the Jennifer Garner of it all, the Channing Tatum of it all, right? There is this notion in the movie, if the movie has a theme at all, it is almost that whether or not you like a movie, it deserves an ending. And whether or not anything is to your particular taste, someone enjoys it, and those people deserve to get everything out of it that they want, right? And those, sort of Elektra and Blade and Gambit fighting to the death so that Deadpool can save his universe is sort of this hilarious but beautiful way of speaking to the idea that, like, everyone wants catharsis, right? And everyone in their life wants to feel like they lived for a reason. They did something important. The whole idea of the movie is that Deadpool is worried that he's never done anything important, and that's why he's not the anchor being of his own universe, right? So there is a really beautiful kind of through line in saying everyone deserves an ending. And this movie does sort of give not Wolverine, but Hugh Jackman an ending, in sort of giving Deadpool the opportunity to look at him and say, hey man, you fucking killed it. Like, none of this would be happening if you hadn't been Wolverine, right? Like that is, and that is, I think there is some beauty to that notion. But it is beset on all sides by fart jokes and using people's clavicles to behead other people.
Yeah, and I think that's why this one gets, and I wrote this on Letterboxd, this one I think wipes the floor with the second one, which is a very forgettable movie in general, but it does approach the quality of the first one in large part because the first one, as funny and vulgar and violent as it is at its core. I mean, it was released on Valentine's Day partly because it's a romance. It's him trying to get back to Vanessa, and it's him trying to free her, and he thinks he's inadequate because of his scarring, and she accepts him for who he is, and it's a very, very good movie. I think they've finally gotten back to like the one with the second one. He had like the kid and Cable and whatever, and it was like fine. It was like hijinks, but it wasn't like, obviously I barely remember the movie.
But it's interesting too, right? Because in some ways they've all sort of been pitched as romances, and this is one thing I wanted to make sure.
No, not really. They have all been pitched. I mean, the Cable thing is maybe a romance. Well, but let me say this: all the Deadpool movies have the same plot, which is that he needs to learn how to play nice with each other, with other people.
Sure, yes, absolutely.
They are all the exact same plot. So it's just a matter of the first one, he's playing nice with Colossus and Negasonic Teenage, whatever. The second one, it's the kid and Cable and Zazie Beetz and whatever. And now this one, the big one is Wolverine.
Right.
And and the MCU potentially.
Yes, absolutely. And so, the first one came out on Valentine's Day. The second one, sort of had,
June,
had this, what will happen plot with the kid and Vanessa and all that. And then this one, all the advertising, we've been going back, the three of us have been going back and forth in our work chat about this, has the advertising for it all has had this sort of like almost proto 90s, like, in my opinion, your mileage may vary, but for me, has had this oddly clunky sort of homophobic like advertising campaign where it's like, but what if they kissed?
I mean, I just see that as like the bromanticism that they've always had with like Deadpool throughout all of comics. Like he literally has a comic book run of Spider-Man called "Isn't It Bromantic?"
Yeah, I mean, they've established in the movies also that he'll fuck anything. Like he fucks like the stuffed unicorn, right? So he is
pansexual in the movies and comics.
He's attracted to Jackman, by the way. Like one of the funniest bits is the TVA guy who just is constantly horny for Jackman every time he sees him.
Which is also an incredible first Avengers callback, because the way they do it is that guy is just
the guy. He's Peggy Carter or whatever. Yeah.
No, he's the dude playing Tetris, right? Like when Tony's on the deck and he says,
the first Avengers movie. I thought you meant Cap, the first Avengers. Sorry.
No. I'm saying when Tony's on the deck and he says, that man is playing Galaga. Yeah. That they do the exact same thing, but he goes, that man is horny for me. Look, I would not be dinging it if, for example, they had kissed. There is just this weird energy to me where the movie sort of wants to have its cake and eat it too, where it feels weird. And we don't have to spend a lot of time on this at all, but it feels weirdly aggro in like, sure, man, wouldn't it be crazy if like we were into each other or something? Let's hold it.
I didn't get that vibe.
No, not the movie, the marketing.
No, I didn't get that vibe from the marketing at all.
Oh, the marketing has driven me crazy the entire time because they keep being like posters of them like dancing like Beauty and the Beast or whatever. And I'm like, okay, but like the whole thing has felt like it is a
usual irreverence. I don't know that that's like
it's like
I don't know.
Like, romance. It's that one Vine post, 2 dudes sitting in a hot tub 5 feet apart because they're not gay. It's literally that, but for a whole movie.
Perhaps I am just too sensitive about it. The whole thing has just felt a little silly to me. I and honestly, this is where I will confess my own bias. I have never been a fan of what I feel like Ryan Reynolds feels like the Deadpool humor is. Like, to me, it is, I remember what Ryan Reynolds' career was before he discovered Deadpool. Yeah. I remember him trying and failing in multiple movies to be a romantic comedy lead. I remember
he tried to be Green Lantern. There was
trying to be an action hero, and it didn't really work. And it wasn't until
he had already been trying to do Ryan Reynolds. Not Ryan Reynolds, Deadpool.
Yeah. Well, it wasn't until he found a way to hide his face and body from the audience that suddenly everyone went, oh, maybe he's a kind of good actor. But it's just, it feels like him treading on similar things often. Although I will say the thing I really enjoyed about this movie was how often other characters in the film just fucking punch him in the nuts and tell him to shut the fuck up, which felt like it was appropriately spaced for me. It was a recognition that everyone is annoyed by this man, not just me.
one of the reviews I read or articles I read said that it reminded the writer a lot of like 48 Hours, like Nick Nolte, Eddie Murphy, the kind of like Midnight Run, Robert De Niro, Charles Grodin, that kind of the 80s, 90s buddy cop stuff. And I
Midnight Run. Oh, what a movie to be compared to.
I know,
I
right?
think Hugh Jackman mentioned somewhere that Ryan Reynolds pitched it to him as Plane, Trains, and Automobiles.
Yeah, so Due Date and something like that is also very much in there. Yeah.
So ultimately, as we sort of wind down the reviews here, I liked it. I thought that the comedy worked. I thought that the cameos of it all really buoyed the film a lot. For me, there were, in some ways, the movie was sort of what Deepak, you and I talked about this moments before we walked into the theaters. Whatever problems I had with No Way Home and Multiverse of Madness, they were not the problems that by and large I saw general audiences having with them. I saw a lot of general audiences in a tizzy because there weren't enough
cameos in Doctor Strange. And,
precisely. This movie felt to me like what folks were expecting those movies to be. And I'm wondering if this is sort of going back to what I was saying of, this movie is almost like a joyride of a picture compared to things like No Way Home or Multiverse of Madness, where you've almost got to be scribbling notes the whole time to make, but at the same time, and this is the question I'll put to you guys, I wasn't sure, and I enjoyed the movie a lot. I wasn't sure who I would recommend it to, because on a certain level, I felt like the entire time I was Rolodexing 25 years of comic book news down to, like, as you say, Channing Tatum not getting his own Gambit movie, and that being like a whole fucking joke in the thing.
I hear what you're saying. I think enough of those are blink and you'll miss it, or there's so many jokes. It's like a Taika Waititi movie. It is such a volume game that if this joke doesn't land or it goes over your head because it's a reference you don't understand, the next one is right around.
Just wait 45 seconds,
and that'll probably land with you.
Yeah, and so yes, there's that, but then also I think this also plays into a little bit of why like the movie's rated R, because yes, there's a lot of irreverent like R-rated jokes, and there's a lot of like R-rated like fight scenes, but I seriously think they weren't like that much intense, and I almost partially think that they like wanted to make sure this movie came out as R-rated so that it would go to an audience that grew up with
older audience. Yep.
Mm-hmm. Exactly.
I've seen
to make sure that the people watching it would know everything that like was coming off of the movie.
And to Riley's point about the cameos not being what they wanted, or it goes against kind of, it's not what Spider-Man and Doctor Strange were. I've seen some things on Letterboxd where people complain about weak cameos. And I think that goes in some part. I can kind of tell how old some people are, because to them, it's not exciting to see Elektra or Blade or whatever again. And I don't think it's exciting for most people to see Elektra again, but it's fun to see Jennifer Garner again.
So
it's fun to see Jennifer Garner make a joke about how she's not disappointed that Daredevil is dead.
Yes.
or Blade saying that he's going to be the only Blade. There ain't never going to be another Blade.
Or Blade saying that he doesn't like Ryan Reynolds because of Blade Trinity.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And Ryan Reynolds is replying, "You never did."
Yeah, I don't like you. You never did. It was an incredible joke.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, Cavill showing up, like there were so many high quality, like if you get it, you get it jokes.
Azazel's in there. They recast Juggernaut, but it's the same as Azazel from first.
And they make a joke about how they recast Juggernaut.
So one question I had about the Void, well, two questions. One is that apparently it's from Loki, and I think he mentions that in the movie. The Void from Loki.
It's a part of it. So like whenever the TVA like needs to remove something from the timeline because it was like quote unquote interfering, and they would send it to the Void.
So it's just the recycling bin, basically. For
yes, it's the recycling bin for like all timelines.
So that leads me to my second question then. Is this movie tacitly admitting that Ant-Man is done with the MCU, or that Giant Man?
No, I think it's a different Ant-Man.
Different one. Okay.
I think there's a theory going around about this, because there's a weird continuity error in Endgame where you see Ant-Man as like a giant, but then it immediately cuts to like, and then it immediately cuts to like Paul Rudd running through the tunnel with like the Infinity Gauntlet or something. So And yeah, you can literally like go look that up or like go rewatch the movie. So a lot of people are thinking that the giant Ant-Man in the void is someone that the TVA pruned from like the Endgame battle. But
that would make
it still wouldn't explain how he ended up there in the first place.
Right.
Yeah, I this is a thing that we're going to talk about.
Yeah.
This is a thing we're going to talk about a lot more on the other side of the interview. But the way that they are going to start treating multiverse beings, and the way that we are going to start having to understand that there are just always 7 different Hulks out there, and some of them look like our guy and some of them don't, and they're we're just going to have to be flexible about it. I think that this was sort of the perfect movie to introduce that in, because I hear what you're saying, right, Deepak, which is within the void, the bad guy's lair is inside of Ant-Man's gigantic ass body. And so are we supposed to say that Paul Rudd just is out? I don't think so. I think that this movie is just sort of trying to get us to a point where we accept, like, oh, here's a dead Ant-Man. He's not our Ant-Man. He's just a Ant-Man.
Yeah.
Right.
Okay. That's interesting, because I would have thought, why then would you use that character of all characters? And I'm in my mind doing the whole thing of, well, they would have written it before Ant-Man came out. They would not have known that Quantum Mania would bomb.
Yeah.
Majors.
Yeah. No, I don't think it was any sort of.
That's why I said you earlier, like they didn't do any reshoots. So like, when did that get worked in there and whatever?
I think the reshoots are because of the strike. We didn't get enough into this earlier, and I was able to Google it up. So.
According to Variety or Vanity Fair, wherever I sent you that article from, the movie shot for 69 days, which is very short for MCU, and there were no reshoots. Apparently what happened was they started filming, strike happened, so they couldn't do anything, and then they finished filming, and maybe there was some extra writing. I know Reynolds talked about doing some improv, but he couldn't do it because of the writer's strike, so they had to wait for some of that. So I think they're whatever usually happens in reshoots happened during the strike in like written form, and then they came back into production and really went in strong. And I think that's how they were able to. Again, the results. This felt cohesive. Like, I don't know what a Sean Levy movie is, because I don't think Sean Levy is someone who has a distinctive visual flair or a style. But this did feel relatively cohesive, and not like, even though they had like 5 or 6 writers, it didn't feel like a bunch of people throwing things into the mix, hoping that it would be a seed for their future movie, or Feige maintaining that this character has to be in there. My only real complaint about the movies towards the end, it gets a little long-winded, which Reynolds himself tells you. He's like, we're in the home stretch here, guys, I promise.
Yeah, I promise.
And,
He's like,
the whole point with the army of Deadpools, I thought was pointless. I didn't understand the point of their inclusion. I don't know what they did.
I think that is the weakest point of the movie. I think that as soon as
Lively and Matthew McConaughey, and then of course,
right, it gets Lively in there. Yes, I don't know what the point. As soon as Jackman pulls on the mask, I think it stops being Jackman entirely. We saw it, Deepak, on what was once the biggest IMAX screen in the country, I think.
Now it's just Virginia.
Now it's just Virginia. It's been sullied to the point that they had to re-record the intro.
Hey, Sully, nice job.
Hey,
Sully. Hey.
Would have done it in July. But it is, I clocked in the moment, for example, the big, hero shot, right? When the camera slowly pans around them in panoramic and a big IMAX shot. It is very clearly a CGI goopy Wolverine.
Yeah.
I think that the advantage of having him put on the mask is that they could sort of make him a computer character after that. I think that section of the film is the weakest of the entire thing. From basically when the Deadpool fight starts up through
when they jump through the
live
void
long and prosper.
When they jump through the portal in the void. I didn't know who Alioth was either. Apparently, that's from the shows. I didn't know. B-15 apparently is also on Loki. I did not know.
Yeah. There was a lot of the way that you wanted to watch WandaVision before Multiverse of Madness, you probably want to watch Loki.
I don't think you even needed to do that either. Yeah.
Well, I don't know that either was necessary, but there was additional information to be gleaned. I think this movie's a thumbs up from me. I don't think I love it maybe as much as both of you do, but I had a good time. I laughed at the jokes. It was fun to see superheroes. It was good that they had Hugh Jackman, or we haven't much talked about Jackman, but it was good to have him around to cut to for emotional moments when you needed there to be like an actual plot to the film. I thought that he did a good job at holding his own there. It was it was sort of an interesting exercise in cognitive dissonance in some ways, because you're right, Deepak. Like, on the one hand, I'm like, but Logan, and he died. But on the other hand, I'm like, oh, I am happy to see my friend again. So, it was fun time at the movies.
Just as much as Jackman, they were so good to put the yellow suit back in, to put the cowl on him, to give him the white eyes. There's a lot of fan service. There's a lot of nostalgia baiting. There's a lot of the things that we all like to complain about, how not just the MCU or superhero movies have become, but just like movies in general and society in general has become. But I think this is a movie that the cameos and all of the nostalgia and all of the references are so baked into the DNA of what they're doing here. And it doesn't have the Spider-Man problem of being, well, it's so obvious because we know 2 years ago that they were going to cast Jamie Foxx and Alfred Molina and everything. We know what we're building up to, just fucking get to. And it doesn't have the Doctor Strange problem of, oh, you can tell that they had an interesting Doctor Strange story about him meeting different versions of himself and trying to figure out what kind of man he wants to be, but it has to service this larger multiverse narrative and America Ferrara and the Spider-Man of it all. So things get a little murky there. This one is.
I did this earlier as well, Deepak.
Exactly
America Ferrera is
it to be, and it just keeps going. And I think that's why it's good. You got to let me finish the fucking sentence, by the way.
No, I don't actually, but also America Ferrera. I did this. I'm just pointing it out because I also literally did it earlier today, this very day, talking about this movie. America Ferrera, real human person, not MCU character.
I don't know what that means.
I'm just saying that's not what her name is, right? America Ferrera is the actor.
What is the
I'm just saying. No, I literally made this exact mistake earlier.
America Ferrera is the actress from Barbie. America Chavez.
Yes.
Yes. There we go.
Yes. No, I'm with you, and to that exact point, I think that is a product of the movie not taking itself so goddamn seriously.
But I don't think Doctor Strange took itself seriously. I don't think the Marvels took it seriously.
But I think that the MCU presents you with this feeling of like, oh, this is important.
Right.
Did I watch WandaVision beforehand or what the fuck ever? Oh, it's a Sam Raimi picture. Like, I just feel like at this point, 30 whatever movies in, the MCU has this vibe that people have caught, right? This bug of like, oh, did I do my homework? Am I prepared? Am I ready? And like, as a comics reader, right? As our comic book boy, you can deep fake your brain into thinking like, for a big comics event, oh, I've got to read every fucking issue that leads into it before it starts, or I won't know what the starting circumstances are of Secret Invasion. It doesn't fucking matter, bud. They will explain it all in the issue. And I think that, like, as we talk about comic book movies, not just movies that are about comic book characters, like, this movie does a good job of saying, I will explain to you everything you need. And maybe in some ways it is protected by the Deadpool of it all. That he can just like turn to camera and be like, hey, here's what you missed in Loki or whatever. But it just feels unpretentious in a way that I think is accessible to people, I think is fun.
Which is funny and ironic considering that this movie, more than any other MCU movie, probably has the most amount of stuff
of homework. If you don't know for Wesley Snipes,
entire studio's backlog. Plus Blade coming from Warner Brothers and New Line. Which is why it's not in the end montage.
Plus Channing not ever getting the movie. You need to know about movies that didn't get made.
And I think the perfect little bow on this conversation is I think we can all be very, very thankful that Channing Tatum Gambit never happened. It is cool to see him in the costume and to flick the cards.
It's amazing.
That whatever he was, maybe he purposely
that was part of the joke.
Give him an Oscar.
Yeah, I think maybe he purposely did it that way. Maybe he wouldn't have done that in an actual Gambit movie, but yeah, he looked the part. But
I will say, for me, the one thing I want to call out before we go to the interview, I thought it was a stroke of genius to cut off the Juggernaut's feet.
Yeah, that was great.
Oh,
I've never. How do you stop the Juggernaut? You just cut his dang feet off. What's he gonna do then, idiot? All right. Now we are going to throw to my interview with Heidi MacDonald. We're going to talk about comics, and then on the other side, we're going to talk Comic Con news. So we'll see you over there.
This week on the podcast, she's one of the founders of the nonprofit Friends for Lulu, an advocacy organization designed to promote readership of comic books by women and the participation of women in the comics industry. She's an award-winning editor and journalist with 20 years of experience working for Disney and DC Comics, where she edited Lion King, Scooby-Doo, Swamp Thing, and Y the Last Man. Heidi, I'm giving you the whole thing. She's the founder and editor-in-chief of The Beat, the world's greatest comic book website, and her book, Secret Teachings of Comic Book Master, The Art of Alfredo Alcala, is a send-up to one of the greatest of all time and available wherever you get books. One of the all-time greatest herself, Heidi MacDonald, is here with us today. Yay!
Hey, well, hi.
Thanks for being here.
Well, of course, Ryley. And I mean, boy, that was my best intro ever. You know, it's like I feel like Samantha Irvin just announced me, and I'm walking out at WrestleMania. So, holding up my belt.
I would love to see you at WrestleMania, Heidi. That would be incredible.
Yeah. Well, you might, anyway.
I'm here for it.
At WrestleMania, and they actually have a booth there where you can, or like a setup where you could actually make an entrance video. And I didn't know about it, so I didn't set aside the time. So next time. You could pick your music and everything. Like you can come out to, whoever. So yes.
Do you know what your walkout music is?
Boy, no, I'd have to think.
All right. When I was in high school, I was on the swim team, and you could do that if you made finals because there'd be prelims and finals. And if you made finals and you were the fastest swimmer in the final heat of finals, you could pick the music that everybody walked up to. But I was never a fast swimmer, so I had a lot of theories, but never one I actually got to put into practice.
I like that they make it part of the reward system. That just shows the level of impact that intro music has.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, right. And it sticks in your head, and it makes you feel like this is my groove. All right. Well, Heidi, speaking of intros, we're talking comics movies, and I thought where we could start is I sort of was wondering from your perspective, when did you feel like comic movies like really sort of arrive, right? Because there's definitely a period of time like in the aughts, right? Where like we're sort of doing it, but we're sort of still like it's the shorthand we always use on the website is that scene in X-Men where they joke about the yellow and blue spandex, right? Like they're still a little afraid of fully giving into the conceit of kind of the comic book world. Did you feel like there was a movie that you saw that you were like, this is it? This is doing it?
Well, I do think Spider-Man 2, it's of the original Sam Raimi trilogy. Yep. Was, I think it's one of the 5 top superhero movies of all time, and definitely a masterpiece. And it was so fully realized in all aspects of melding the comics to movies. But so was Superman #1, and then later on, so was Thor Ragnarok. So that's 3 of my top 5 right there. So I guess I kind of knew that it could be completely. Work. I think your question might be more like, when did I know that superhero movies were the new Western? That was this genre was just going to dominate. And I'm not sure there was an exact moment, but probably when they brought out the Avengers for the first time. I think it happened at Hall H Comic Con. But when it was revealed that Kevin Feige did have this whole plan. And, they had been bought by Disney at that point. So you could see that he was going to have the resources to pull it out. And I think that was kind of a watershed moment. It was definitely like, wow, they really have a whole thing for this, don't they?
Right. Yeah. When I was a kid, so I was born in 91, right? So I missed like the Burton Batman.
Wow, you're born after that. Okay.
Yeah, I get the.
I'm here this a long time.
So the thing for me was I was squared up for the Schumacher Batmans, right? Like those were the first ones that were like pitched at me as a person who was born when I was born, right? Like I was so into the Burton Batman, but that was because my mom's a big Jack Nicholson fan, and we didn't own that many VHSs, so I was allowed to watch that Batman movie whenever I wanted.
Well,
but like.
Oh, go on. I'm sorry.
No, I was just going to say I really grew to love like the hokey, like fun campiness of the Schumacher stuff, and I became such like a Adam West Batman fan in that same vein. Like not super getting the joke. I was just like, no, what are you talking? He's Batman. He's here to fight the bad guys.
I just wanted to jump in there because I think they're saying it's like 35 years since Batman came out, or longer than that. It came out in 89.
89. Yeah.
89. Right. Okay. Well, I should know. I mean, I did go. I got and saw it opening night with my friends before you were born.
Cool,
right.
Cool.
So and I was just I don't want to be the old timer of like, and I saw Led Zeppelin. I mean, I hate that. But
no, go off. That's why you're here.
Yeah, and when seeing people talk about this Batman premiere in 1989, it's really hard to overstate how huge it was at the time. And I was working at the Hollywood Reporter at the time, and not in editorial, but in the advertising department. And so I was really very plugged into what was going on in Hollywood. And, what the zeitgeist in Hollywood was. I was living in Los Angeles. So that summer of Batman was not just a testament to how much people like Batman and the potential of the character. It was also a testament to branding at the time because it was mostly bootleg merchandise, but there was so much Batman merchandise everywhere with the logo.
With that yellow,
with the yellow bat symbol. And so it was just ubiquitous. Clubbing Batman was everywhere. And
that's incredible.
And everything that came together for that with, Prince doing the soundtrack and, Danny Elfman doing the music and, the designs and Tim Burton, everything about it was very much of that zeitgeist. And the opening, people do not remember this. I think the opening weekend was something like $40 million, the opening day, which was
sure it crushed.
Unheard of. This was a number that just smashed the previous records. People were in Hollywood, insiders were completely just blown away by how successful this movie was. So I think it is, it's just very interesting to think back to how successful this movie was. And yet, we didn't have the internet at the time, so that, Michael Keaton's casting was controversial. It absolutely was. And, had there been an internet, it would have been a flame. But, whatever the medium of the time was, which was, letter columns and, magazines it's like Starlog. And, there was a little bit of geeky magazines and also some comics related ones. But I think it was Wizard, but I'm not sure Wizard magazine had even launched by then. So that might have been, I think Wizard launched in the 90s after the whole kind of speculator boom. But I would have to say that the Batman film of 1989 really kind of paved the way for a lot of the speculator boom in a way that people don't really remember just how huge that movie was and how much influence it had and what a shockwave it was to just, theater going, that this movie was successful. Now, it's interesting also that at Warner Brothers,
the Warner Brothers, the bastion of cinematic integrity these days.
Right. Yes. But it is at that time, it's just one of the top studios. It's made so many masterpieces and movies. And, I wish someone, I will say, I'm sure that on other episodes of this podcast, you're going to talk about the book, the history of it's not the title, it's the MCU book by Johanna Robinson. And,
we're having Dave Gonzalez on in a couple weeks. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. So to me, this is the Rosetta Stone. This is the essential text of our times because really, yes, it's an incredible book. I read it during a blackout. I had no power, and each night during the holidays, and I would just eke out my power to read a few chapters of this book before I went to sleep. So that's how much I love this book. But anyway, I wish someone would do the DC version of this.
DC version. I hear exactly what you're saying.
Because it is such an incredible story, and I don't think anyone has told it. Michael Uslan, you got to tell the story, man, before it's all over. You got to open up. And
what an interesting guy. Can you just speak to him for a little while? Because I feel like he is a person that a lot of our mainstream audience might not have heard of, but his role in the DC history and Batman specifically is just such an interesting one.
Well, sitting here in 2024, we're used to having powerful nerds, having people who are not ashamed to talk about how they love comic books or superheroes in positions of power at the studio and elsewhere. And I guess what I was going to get, so to answer your question, I want to send that off into a larger point about Warner Brothers specifically. But yeah, Michael Uslan was a comics fan. And he saw their potential as filmed entertainment, and he got a option on Batman way back in the day. Like the Adam West TV show really destroyed it for a lot of serious superhero fans. I loved it. It's still one of my favorite things ever done in comic book media. But that's me. I like wacky humor. So the Batman character had been a bit. And shotified, tawdry. I'm not sure what the verb I'm looking for is here, but and Frank Miller with Dark Knight Returns really, saved. Also earlier, obviously the Denny O'Neil, Neil Adams version had kind of, resurrected or salvaged Batman from the throes of this gaudy op art version. So Michael Uslan was somebody who saw that, and he had the vision to know that this character could work in a way that would be popular. So he was able to get an option for it. And, they don't make he's very smart. He got some, I don't even know the terms, but he got the option for it in a way.
No, I don't know if anybody does, but to your point, we need the book so we can find out.
Right. And it's a lot like what Stan Lee and Marvel sold all these options to their greatest characters that were awful. And in perpetuity, we're like with Spider-Man, like Sony owns Spider-Man in perpetuity, unless they don't stop making Spider-Man movies. So, there were horrible deals that show you how little self-esteem the people who owned this IP had in the 60s and 70s and 80s. So, but Michael Uslan is a very good steward of it. And obviously he's been there for, some of the greatest movies of all, like the Christopher Nolan trilogy, and Batman Returns. We love that movie, and the first Tim Burton Batman. So yeah, he's definitely one of the guys who had some vision and was able to put it into play. And he had some other options. Obviously he was involved with the Spirit movie, which just maybe not. Not.
Hollywood always learns the wrong lessons from these successful movies, right? So you get Batman, which is this mega hit, like you were saying, and then it's, clearly we should do dark, shadowy detective figures and not like comic book adaptations.
Well, right? The Spirit could have been quite something, but anyway, I guess what I wanted to say is that to me, this is the untold story of Warner Brothers. Mm-hmm. I've been told this by a few people, just in a very dark, shadowy, deep throat kind of way, that a lot of executives at Warner Brothers really didn't like superheroes for a long time. And the success of Batman came, and they weren't like, oh my God, this is great. We got to do this. It was like, how can you believe they like this shit? So, so if you look at what happened in the wake of Batman 1989, and the history is just so many fits and starts after this. And, the movies got progressively worse and worse, obviously. Like the Superman franchise really went so downhill and, ended with some of the worst movies of the era. And with Batman, obviously ended with the George Clooney version and just, total trash fire. So, and then when you look at, like, they wanted to do Batman and Superman, back in 2004. Like there were some executives there, studio people, who have this on their little blotter. They wrote it on a Post-it note, Superman versus Batman, and God knows when. And they just kept looking at that Post-it note until we got Superman versus Batman, Dawn of Justice.
Well, it's one of those things that I'm sure right? But it's in the background of I Am Legend, right? When they're going through the Times Square, and they have the Batman versus Superman poster. But for me, I'll just give you a little background. I'll maybe tell Bruno to cut this. But for me, when I remember being in middle school, I was sitting next to the woman who is now my wife. And we had this middle school. I know, isn't that cute? We were not dating at the time. We just were friends. But we had this assignment where we had to write about some big like invention that had changed America. And so she was writing about hospital equipment, and I was writing about Batman. But this is like my early days as like a little baby, like film journalist. I was like everything I could find about this potential Batman Superman movie. I was like inhaling for this report that I was trying to write up. And I remember being so excited, and people would do like Christopher Reeve, Michael Keaton, like supercut videos and stuff. Yeah, that was a time. Right.
Yeah,
but I hear you saying they were just scared of it or something.
Yeah, I think they had Wolfgang Peterson. Right? Yeah, they had a very good director of the boat, Das Boot. So yeah, I mean, if you, as you do this podcast, you should ask people about this, because this story has never really been told to me. And, I think the disaster of the Snyder era and, disaster and tragedy of the Snyder era, and the Kevin Tsujihara and all that has starting with that, because it was such a disaster, has been written about a lot. But I'm just saying there was a lot leading up to that.
Right.
And that story, I don't know, Gavin, Johanna, if you get somebody, you got to get on this story. You got to get on the story while they're still alive, because it's got to be great. It's gonna be great.
I totally agree. I would welcome that book into my life. So I'll pass it along. When I talk to them, I'll put a book in there for you and I.
All right. And we're back. If you haven't got the opportunity, I would encourage you to look up all of Heidi's Comic-Con coverage, because it was really excellent. And living out here in DC was the way that I was tuning into Comic-Con over the course of the entire event. So if there was anything that you didn't catch that you want to get caught up on, I would absolutely say see if you can still catch Heidi's coverage that was broadcast on Roku. And even if you can't, you should be checking out Heidi's comic book coverage all the time at the Comics Beat. Link in the show notes. Heidi, I am not going to say this for every interview I do this year, especially because a lot of them are with folks who I am happy to call my friends. Heidi is an idol of mine. Her website is something I check at least weekly on New Comic Book Day, if not more often. It is a blessing to the comics community, and I was so happy to have the opportunity to talk to her. So please check out Comics Beat. Follow Heidi on the socials. Make sure you're not missing anything if you're any kind of comics fan, because she is an oracle in the space, and her work needs to be followed if you want to know what's happening in comics. But we are going to get ready to talk Comic-Con news now. We have a couple things we're going to breeze through real quick so we can get to the main event.
Could I open with a quick question, though?
Yes, sir.
Just like also coming off of like our Deadpool conversation, as Deepak mentioned earlier, there was like a bit of a line in Deadpool that I'm not going to reiterate now because we're out of the spoiler section, from Wesley Snipes regarding Blade. And then very coincidentally, Kevin Feige and company did a very successful job of distracting us from asking about anything in regards to a Blade movie over Comic-Con weekend. That being said, is that something that we should read into? Is there something happening there, or is it just still in development hell? Still something that might happen?
I think a Blade movie is happening because Mahershala Ali called Kevin Feige up and said he wants to play Blade. I don't know that they know how to make Blade happen. I don't know that they know how to fit him into the universe. They've had 3 or 4 directors come and go. And at this point, I don't think it's a Feige being too meddling thing. I think it's just tonally or whatever. They don't know how to figure it out. And maybe now that R ratings in the MCU work, they'll have a little more wiggle room.
That's true. Okay.
I think that they are disinclined to announce anything too specific outside of D23 these days. I think that Comic-Con has sort of become the landing ground for, with the obvious Robert Downey Jr. of it all sort of being the exception, but I think that was calculated. I think that Comic-Con is now sort of the place that they go to give you updates on stuff that is already known. And I think that D23 is the place that people go to find out new stuff. So I don't necessarily
which
know.
Which is why it was so surprising this weekend what they did.
Exactly.
Well,
yes.
I wouldn't be so sure because Kevin Feige has come out recently and said that D23 he's reserving for like the Disney Plus exclusive stuff from Marvel.
I agree, but at the same time, he has also said that this year we will find out what the asterisk in Thunderbolts means, and we didn't find it out at Comic-Con.
He already corrected himself that now we're not going to find out until the movie comes out.
Well, there you are, right? So I suppose I guess I don't particularly know.
It's going to have an asterisk in the title.
It's Thunderbolts asterisk.
I bet that it's going to be revealed in the post-credit scene of Brave New World.
I think it's that. I mean, look, we're starting with Brave New World. We wanted to talk about Brave New World
and something, right?
No, I think it's that Thunderbolt Ross dies. I think it's that Red Hulk doesn't make it out of Brave New World, and that it's a sort of organization that is named after Thaddeus Ross. Right? It is the Thunderbolts, but it doesn't include Thunderbolt. That is my guess, because I think that they cannot sign Harrison Ford to more than one picture for these fucking things. Why not
just call it Thunderbolts? I don't think you need to call it the Thunderbolts.
No, but it's called Thunderbolts for sure. Mm-hmm. But I'm saying my guess is that the asterisk is that it is named after the man, but the man is not part of the team.
I understand that, but I think you could still do that and have it called Thunderbolts. And you
right, but that's not as fun. They want engagement. Look at us talking about why is there a fucking asterisk in the title?
I honestly thought that was just something Bruno typed into the note. I did not know that there was an actual asterisk in the title.
There indeed is. But let's start with
the fantabulous emancipation of one Thunderbolt Ross. Is that one?
Yeah, precisely that. So I think Brave New World looks cool. I'm excited for it. It has a spy espionage vibe. The ad sort of looks like White House Down or whatever, which I think is all good for a Captain America movie. I'm excited. They are no longer pretending like Harrison Ford isn't going to play a Hulk. And sorry, that's actually what happens to me. I don't turn into a Hulk. I just sneeze. But I think that movie looks like, it feels like kind of back to basics in a way that I feel like after this big success, they'll be able to ride to a certain point. I don't know. We're hearing Giancarlo Esposito is going to be the head of the Serpent Society. Of course, we know the Master.
A role that was added during the reshoots, apparently.
Apparently. Well, because the Master from Incredible Hulk, I think, is supposed leader.
Yeah.
Mr. Blue is supposed to be sort of, I think, the main villain. We'll see what happens with the White House, right? Of course, not too long ago, the government was the bad guy of a Captain America movie, and this sort of has
the vibe. Is Ross the president in the movie?
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. What do you guys?
From Secret Invasion is not the president anymore, I guess. Not that shows.
Yeah, we haven't really figured out what happens with Dermot Mulroney's character.
No, nor do we really know how Ross became the president, other than that he shaved his mustache. But yeah, what are you guys thinking about Cap 4?
I didn't watch the footage other than I saw the still image of, I guess, the back of the Red Hulk, kind of like a silhouette.
Oh, holding the shield.
Yeah, but I'm pro Cap because that's by far the strongest trilogy of the MCU, and even if it's not Evans, I like Mackie, and I never saw Winter and the Falcon and the Winter Soldier. My one question is, I have multiple questions, but the one question I have is who's directing it, and Stephen Yeun was going to play a character in Thunderbolts or in Cap 4?
In Thunderbolts.
He was going to be Sentry, and that's now going to be played by Lewis Pullman.
Correct. So that's not in this one. All right, never mind.
No, that's not in this
that was what I was trying to figure out where he might fit into this, because it sounds like
this is being directed by Julius Ona, who has directed
the Cloverfield,
The Girls in Trouble, Cloverfield Paradox, and Loose.
Yeah, so not a super enticing name, but I guess my one concern is they may be putting too much in. They might be overstuffing it. So we'll see what happens.
I'm hoping that it hews pretty closely to the template that was laid out by Winter Soldier. The idea of Captain America as a brand being a sort of political thriller space is very enticing to me. And I think that especially as you move into the era of Anthony Mackie as Captain America, that it only provides more and more opportunity, right? Deepak, I know you didn't watch Falcon and the Winter Soldier, but a big part of that movie, that miniseries, is Yeah, right, precisely. Is that Mackie discovers that before Steve Rogers, there was a sort of Tuskegee style experiment.
Oh, I've heard about this. Yeah.
Right, yeah.
The old black man gives him the speech about going to fight and then comes back.
And that's Carl Lumbly's character that we see in the Brave New World trailer.
So I'm hopeful that sort of alley can provide them with more opportunities to do sort of, inquisitions into what we think about as America, right? Like with the stuff that works so well in a political thriller, right? Here's where you put your allegiances. Do those allegiances really hold? I mean, I would love nothing more than to see Harrison Ford's Red Hulk be the villain of the movie. I just know too much about comics to think that that's going to happen. But yeah,
I assume that's what they were setting up.
Red Hulk's a good guy, my man.
Oh, I think the main antagonist in this is going to be Tim Blake Nelson's character.
I didn't even know they were bringing him back, so that's interesting.
Yeah. All right. So
they've been mining Incredible Hulk a lot recently. But anyway. Sorry.
Well, this is the thing, is because they can't do a solo picture with Hulk. So
I just mean they're mining the characters, right? Like we got Abomination.
That's what I think. I think they're trying to put it wherever they can without the opportunity to do a straight just Hulk sequel.
No, yeah, that makes sense.
All right. So we talked already about the Asterisk in Thunderbolts. Of course, it's going to sort of be the Suicide Squad of the Marvel space. There was some footage that was shown at Comic-Con where people were sort of talking about it having that sort of aura. I think that would be good. I think that the Suicide Squad vibes have sort of been the only thing that people have said DC has done better than Marvel. Of course, Gunn's Suicide Squad, not Air Suicide Squad, #release the air cut. But what do you guys think? God, I wasn't sure if you were going to hear it or not. What do you does Thunderbolts excite you guys? Like, that's one of those movies.
We are at the point with the MCU, and I think this might just go to me as a person, where the less I know about something, the better. I'm more excited the less I know. And so this is such a complete unknown, and it can't possibly be worse than the Suicide Squad movies that we actually got from DC. So fuck it, let's go. And I'm looking at what they have planned for this, and it looks solid. Like, let's do it.
Yeah, I'm excited for it. I think the cast looks good. I think the director has a good track record.
Guy from Beef, I think.
Yeah, exactly. It is the guy from Beef. The two writers is the showrunner for Beef, and then the showrunner for The Bear. So I think comedy and drama wise, we could be looking at like some really juicy stuff.
That could be really great.
I truly think the Sentry portion of it all is going to be like really intriguing. And as Ryley already pointed out, I'm very interested in the Asterisk of Thunderbolts. I have like my own little different theories of what it could mean. I think it could be Brave New World Part 2. I think it could be Dark Avengers. I think it could be New Avengers. Who knows? We shall
Dark see. Avengers would fucking rule. I'm curious.
That actually makes a lot of sense.
That's a great point, that it could be a different team name by the end of the movie or whatever.
Yeah. Midnight Suns or something. Yeah.
It would be very cool. I think that the other thing that has my interest a little bit piqued with that movie is just like, it's an opportunity for somebody to step up, right? This is sort of what the pitch of Suicide Squad was supposed to be originally, the bad one that nobody liked, which was, where DC said, we're going to find our Loki. That was what Suicide Squad was supposed to be, was they were going to find their Loki by throwing all of these villains at the wall and figuring out which one stuck. And the answer was Harley Quinn and no other ones.
Margot Robbie.
Yeah.
Margot Robbie and a booty short. People like that. Who knew?
Imagine. But there is a world where they come out of this movie saying, oh, actually, we're really interested in X character. And right. I think that's what the universe needs right now. And so going into a movie without saying, this is where we want your interest, but rather to say, we're curious about how you guys react to this ensemble. That's the thing we've not had from the MCU before. And I'm curious to see how it plays.
That's a really interesting point, because what Thunderbolts is going to do is give us an opportunity to be reintroduced to a lot of characters that came up and were introduced during a very low phase in the MCU, like the new Black Widow, the Red Guardian, the connection that's being rumored to the Eternals and Tiamat coming out of the ocean, being adamantium, whatever. That I had not thought about that, and that actually makes it even more exciting that people are now going to say, "Oh, maybe I didn't like Yelena the first time I saw her because." But now seeing her kind of take charge of this team and having Winter Soldier, who we always have known since 2014 or whatever. I think you might have actually made me more excited about this than Cap.
Oh, nice. Let's hop in now to what I think is the main event of it all. We don't have to go about this in any particular way, but I think the biggest news that came out of Comic Con in general was that Robert Downey Jr. is going to be playing Victor Von Doom in a film called Fantastic Four: First Steps.
No.
Well, we think so. We think
he was officially announced for Avengers: Doomsday and Secret Wars, but he was not announced for Fantastic Four yet.
Yes,
Doomsday will be Avengers 5.
Yeah. Fair enough. Yes, I suspect. So let me say table stakes first, and then let me get you guys' thoughts. We know that the Fantastic Four movie will be taking place on an alternate Earth.
Yes.
We highly suspect. We know that the villain of the picture is Galactus.
And we know now that he's not going to be a clown.
We know that a villain in the movie is Galactus. I don't know if we know it's the villain.
Yes, and we know he's a big boy who likes to munch planets and not a cloud.
They saw his eyes; it was so good.
And we suspect that the movie ends with either some sort of incursion or Galactus chowing down on Earth or whatever, whereby the Fantastic Four jump through a portal of some sort and arrive at our MCU Earth, where they meet the likes of Anthony Mackie and Namor the Submariner or whatever. Caught up in all of that is the idea that Robert Downey Jr. is going to be playing Dr. Doom in some capacity. An announcement that has sent everyone reeling to their various theory corners. I would like to get you guys' thoughts on it. I, of course, have thoughts of my own, as I have been lambasted on this podcast for years regarding my fandom for Dr. Doom. But I wanted to hear from you guys first. And Bruno, you're rubbing your hands together, so let's start with you, my great producer boy.
Oh, Jesus Christ! But I mean, we can go so many different avenues with this. I think I'm one of the only people that's seriously not looking at this as any negative thing whatsoever, because
you and I are on the same page.
Yes, because a lot of people are seeing this as a bit of an act of desperation from the MCU, and to an extent, that is what this is. As a wrestling fan, I just see this as a company trying to get their top guy, Pedro Pascal, over, and so they bring their latest top guy, Robert Downey Jr., as a heel for a passing of the torch moment.
Yes. Which is a heel turn for sure. Yes.
Which I'm very excited for. That being said, on how they do it, I think they could do it anyways. I think they could really have Robert Downey Jr. just be a Victor Von Doom that happens to look like Tony Stark from the MCU. And that could even be a great layer to his arrogance, where he's just constantly berating people who's comparing him to this other hero. And I think that could be an interesting layer. But
Victor Von Doom made this in a cave with scraps.
What I would be more interested in is them playing into more of just actually making him unrecognizable and using makeups and stuff, because it's something that it's already very clear from Tropic Thunder, Oppenheimer, The Sympathizer. He's comfortable with it. He'll go. We've seen Tropic Thunder. We know the lengths that he will go with under makeup. So yeah.
Listen, Deepak and I were talking earlier about how disappointed we were that they haven't just cast him to play T'Challa at this point. But I think
it was right there.
I think that is honestly, Bruno, my greatest hope as a Doom fan. So I did not see the news as it broke. I was hanging out with Maggie and I were just watching pictures or whatever. I can't even remember a particular. Oh, we were watching. This is a plug I haven't been able to sneak in anywhere else, so it's a little late now. But if you, dear listener, haven't yet done this, go to youtube.com and search up the Naboo movie. It is a table read of the Phantom Menace script by a collection of comedy actors in LA that you can watch for free on the YouTube. And it is funny as fuck. And I love it so much. And I've watched it multiple times. Remember how the Nemoidians sound like offensive Japanese men? What if they were hillbillies? That question and more answered by a thing on YouTube called the Naboo movie. Well, I didn't realize they were Jedi. anyway, we were watching the Naboo movie, so I didn't catch the Doom news. And then the next morning, Maggie unlocked her phone and just as I was sort of coming awake, read to me, Robert Downey Jr. returning to the MCU, but not as Iron Man. And I was sitting there thinking, what is he going to be, the voice in the suit for the girl? Is that going to be what he is? Is he maybe going to be? Ooh, imagine if he played. What's the devil character they're always talking about bringing up pictures? Yeah, what if he was Mephisto? That'd be a good.
That'd be good.
And then I hear he's Doom, and I lose my goddamn shit because of how much I love Doom. But my big thing as a big Doom fan is the man doesn't take his mask off. And so this is where I am on sort of a spectrum of hope, right? Because on the one hand, if you never let him take the right, you have the run up where he looks like RDJ until he becomes Doom, and then the mask goes on and it never comes off again. Or maybe it comes off one time in front of like Tom Holland, who has to like really grapple with the fact that this guy looks like Stark, right? I think that is the best case scenario where you're just letting a really good actor who's got the juice go to town on a new character who we never have to see the face of. So we never have to reckon with the fact that they look the same. It's just like, yeah, maybe it's a little desperate because we know you all love Robert, but hey, he's back. He's doing a new thing. It's going to be different. On the other extreme of it is this, and Deepak, I want you and I have been sort of trying to crack this riddle of new mask, same task, right? And what does that mean necessarily from like a plot perspective? And if they are going to rely too heavily on the legacy of Tony Stark in the MCU, I think that like I am very worried that that is going to be bad news for what should be a fucking layup for them. Like the amount of time folks have spent waiting for Marvel to get their hands on the Fantastic Four to just do like a good Fantastic Four story, right? That we really have not had in film form, right? And the whole promise of Marvel getting these characters back is sort of supposed to be, you know, a la Deadpool and Wolverine. Let's put them through this system that cannot miss, or if it misses, only misses once out of every 15 times. Right? Let's put Marvel's first family into that system and have it spit out something beautiful and elegant. It would be so disappointing to me if that ended up getting hampered by the clunkiness of, oh, look, it's Tony Stark, and it's actually, we're calling him Tony Stark, and we're doing a sort of demon in the armor style story, but we're sanding off all the sharp edges of that, and we're just having him be like the pissed off minor intellect compared to Reed Richards, right? And that he is now Jeff Bridges in the first Iron Man movie, getting pissed at Howard Stark and building a suit of armor around the world in a mean way. That would just be such a disappointment after not just Downey's career in the MCU, but I think more importantly, the promise of the Fantastic Four in the MCU. And that's what I don't want to see. So I have this thing I'm really hoping for that I think would be cool and amazing. But at the same time, I have this sort of like dark version of it that I think is much more likely. And Deepak, I feel like that's sort of where you've been resting a lot of your thoughts more, is like, oh man, what stupid fucking shit are they going to do with this?
Yeah. So here's what I'll say. I preface all this by saying, regardless of my current thoughts, I'm still going to go see the movie and I'm still excited to see whatever they do. But there is an inherent disappointment on two fronts. One is that combined with, you know, obviously Wolverine and Jackman coming back, combined with the news we also got that the Russo brothers are coming back, and I'm pro Russo brother generally, that they're doing both the two Avengers movies. I think it's generally a sign that insider baseball stuff at Disney has come to the forefront, and that Iger has said, this is our cash cow that we acquired, and it's Feige, you've done a great job, but now the train is off the tracks. Part of it is Chapek, part of it's whatever, but at the end of the day, whatever you need to do to get this ship back, we need our blue chips to start acting like blue chips. Yeah. And it's hard not to see transparently that is what happened in light of how recent MCU successes or lack thereof have gone.
Yeah.
But the other side of it is that there is an inherent disappointment in what Ryley has been saying, and that we have waited so long for the Fantastic Four.
We have,
and not just a Fantastic Four. What we hoped would sort of be the definitive Fantastic Four.
The Fantastic Four.
And it does not look like we are getting that at all. It does not. I mean, they have cast 4 actors that look like the Fantastic Four. Great. I mean, we can go back and forth about Pedro Pascal. And all that, they're 4 good actors, but we're not getting Doom. And I mean, I don't. This whole Doom thing, I don't know what they're going to do with it. They're going to have his mask off because it's Downey, and they have to. They're going to build up to a reveal of his face, like exactly the scene that you're talking about, that Spider-Man or Doctor Strange is going to see him and go, what the fuck is going on? He's going to be some version of Tony Stark that went bad, that saw what Thanos did to another universe and overcorrected or whatever it may be, and the power got to his head. We were all so bad at predicting what Infinity War and Endgame would be like, despite thinking that we knew what Infinity War and Endgame would be like.
Right, despite having comics to look at, yeah.
Correct. So it's hard for me to say that, oh, this is definitely what they're going to do. So we'll keep an open mind. I'll keep an open mind. But at the end of the day, if you're expecting, there is the shock of, oh, wow, he's coming back and he's coming back like this. But once the dust settles, it just doesn't fill me. Deadpool and Wolverine made me think they'd figured the multiverse out. And now this news makes me think they have not.
They're going to be ending the multiverse in Secret Wars, regardless. So like we won't be getting any more multiverse after that.
Yeah, that's so the first saga was supposed to be the Infinity Stone saga or whatever, right? This is supposed to be the multiverse saga that ends with Secret Wars. I don't know. I think that my biggest fear right now, right, and it's not literally this, but it's sort of the spirit of this, is that at D23, Feige's on stage and he goes, but who is mighty enough to stop Tony Stark as Doctor Doom? And then he trots out fucking Jeremy Renner and Scarlett Johansson and Chris Hemsworth and Chris Evans, and we're just like, oh, it's and Ant-Man or whatever, right? And it's just, hey, we're doing the same thing again. Like the bringing back the Russos, bringing back RDJ, it all feels like, hey, we heard you. We know that what you hate are new ideas. We will just continue to do the same thing forever. Yeah, we're so sorry we tried to iterate.
Them admitting so does Deadpool and Wolverine. I mean, again, those are legacy characters, right? Yeah. The Marvels did not land. Shang-Chi apparently did not land. The development on the sequel has been dead for a while, as far as we know.
Right.
Eternals.
And he's the only other guy. What's his name? The director.
Him. Yeah, but he got Wonder Man. He got taken off of Avengers.
I'm saying, but that's what I'm saying is like he's supposed to be Ryan Coogler-esque, and even he can't get shit going over there. Yeah. And Coogler's, of course, been shut down basically post the passing of Boseman, unfortunately.
Well, they don't know what to do with Black Panther. So
yeah, so the whole thing is just, I mean, it's just all a mess. And
I mean, I get a lot of your concerns, Ryley, but I will reiterate that I do truly think that they are trying for like a passing of the torch thing between
I hope so.
Pascal with this. And then on that note, like you guys heard it from me when the news first came out. I did not like the idea of Pedro Pascal playing Reed Richards at all. I was very much against it. I could go like for hours about why I didn't think it was a good idea at the time, but I saw the test footage from Comic-Con, and I have to admit, I think that might be the Fantastic Four. Like it was only from one day of shooting. Like Matt Shackman explained in an interview, like the next day, from one day of shooting, I've already gotten like all of the chemistry that I want to be getting off of these 4 people.
That would be great. I have never wanted a movie to be bad, right? And I think that's a thing we say a lot. I want every movie to be amazing, right? I want to go into a movie and have a good, fun time watching the movie. And I mean, I will text you guys after we get off some life-defining stories about going to see the Fantastic Four movies, but it wasn't that the Fantastic Four movies were good. And I would just love to have a definitive, high-quality Fantastic Four. I've always wanted to be a Fantastic Four fan, but the comics have just never really been my thing. Even the Mark Waid run, which is supposed to be just indelible, just didn't really vibe with me the right way. I want to love the Fantastic Four, and I would love for this first Galactus movie to be good. I would love for Downey as as my favorite Marvel villain to be good, right? Like I am now in a position where my favorite Marvel actor is playing my favorite Marvel villain. I want it to be great, but I just, and it is funny how the worm turns, right? Like now I almost have a DCU style reaction to these things where I'm like, how are you guys going to fuck this up? And it's not that I want them to, it's just a concern that's sort of worked its way into my thought process. So yeah, I am hopeful, but you know, maybe once bitten, twice shy about it. All right.
Yeah.
That sounds like it's going to do it for us. Yeah. This has been 2 for the show. Thank you so much for listening to us chat about comic books. It's been like old times this week talking comic book news. I'm Ryley Trahan. This show is produced by Bruno Menezes. Our intro animation is by Bruno Menezes, and our theme music is by Purple Planet. You can check them out at purpleplanet.com. Our art is by Wiki Rascals, who you can get at Wiki Rascals on Instagram. And you can find all of our stuff at nihf.com. If you like what we do, you can subscribe to everything at nihf.com. And for $5 a month, you can sign up for the Nerd Out, which is about to change formats in a way that I haven't told these 2 boys about, but it's about to become a debate show where every week I come to us with a topic like Star Wars ripoff, and then everybody's got to come with their favorite 70s Star Wars ripoff, and we argue about which one's the best. And then you, the audience, gets to vote. It's going to be a fun new thing we're going to try out. And it's going to be a rotating panel and all that. So sign up now. It's good and fun, and I'm excited about it. And it's going to be dramatic. Other than that,
called the Nerd Off. That's all.
Nerd Off is due consideration given to the idea of Nerd Off. Other than that, you can get our weekly email, Nerded Here Weekly, delivered to your inbox every Sunday to tell you everything we've been getting up to. You can also check out all of our shows at nihf.com. And as always, don't forget to tune in next week to hear.